everyone. For those of you who know me, my name is Zoe. I work at the library. I've been there for about going on 9 years now. I've lived in East Kingston my entire life. I went to the East Kingston Elementary School, Cooperative Middle School, and I graduated from Exeter High School, and now I am going to school to become a librarian, a professional librarian. So today I'm going to be reading a few books about libraries. So the first one is called The Library by Sarah Stewart, and the pictures are by David Small. Elizabeth Brown entered the world dropping straight down from the sky. Elizabeth Brown entered the world skinny, nearsighted, and shy. She didn't like to play with dolls. She didn't like to skate. She learned to read quite early and at an incredible rate. She always took a book to bed with a flashlight under the sheet. She'd make a tent of covers and read herself to sleep. Elizabeth Brown went off to school dragging a steamer trunk. Elizabeth Brown unpacked her books, breaking the upper bunk. She sat in all of her classes and doodled on a pad, adrift in dreams of entering a reader's Olympiad. She manufactured library cards and checked out books to friends, then shocked them with her midnight raids to collect the books again. Elizabeth Brown preferred a book to going on a date. While friends went out and danced till dawn, she stayed up reading late. She took the train one afternoon and promptly lost her way, so bought a house and settled down to tutoring for pay. Elizabeth Brown walked into town summer, fall, winter, and spring. Elizabeth Brown walked into town looking for only one thing. She didn't want potato chips. She didn't want new clothes. She went straight to the bookstore. May I have one of those? Just asking for some books. Elizabeth Brown walked right back home and read and read and read. She even read while exercising and standing on her head. She made a list of groceries and tucked it in her book, then lost the list among the fruits and left with nothing to cook. She read about Greek goddesses while vacuuming the floor. Attending only to her book, she'd walk into a door. Books were piled on top of chairs and spread across the floor. Her shelves began to fall apart as she read more and more. Big books made very solid stacks on which teacups could rest. Small books became the building blocks for busy little guests. When volumes climbed up the parlor walls and blocked the big front door, she had to face the awful fact she could not have one more. Elizabeth Brown walked into town that very afternoon. Elizabeth Brown walked into town whistling a happy tune. She didn't want a bicycle. She didn't want silk bows. She went straight to the courthouse. May I have one of those? The form was for donations. She quickly wrote this line. I, E. Brown, give to the town all that was ever mine. Elizabeth Brown Free Library. Elizabeth Brown moved in with a friend and lived to a ripe old age. They walked to the library day after day and turned page after page after page. All right, so the next one we're going to read is The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore by William Joyce. Morris Lessmore loved words. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything he hoped for. But every story has its upsets. One day, the sky darkened, the winds blew and blew. Look, there he goes. Till everything Morris knew was scattered, even the words of his book. He didn't know what to do or which way to go, so he began to wander and wander. Then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down, as had become his habit, Morris Lessmore looked up. Drifting through the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron of flying books. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It could only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. The book was an amiable fellow and urged Morris to follow him. The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested. Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint chatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book was whispering an invitation to adventure. Then his new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm. It held itself open as if hoping to be read. The room rustled to life, and so Morris's life among the books began. Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies needed cleaning up and would visit with the comedies. The encyclopedias, weary of facts, would relax with the comic books and fictions. All in all, it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of others. Always use a bookmark. Sometimes Morris would become lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days. There he is, sliding among the letters. Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favorite that everyone loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. Everyone's story matters, said Morris. All the books agreed. At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told, and everyone settled down to their proper places on the shelves, a great big dictionary would get the last word. Zzz. It was then that Morris Lessmore would once again write in his own book. He wrote of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. The days passed. So did the months, and then the years and years. Look at these. And Morris Lessmore became stooped and crinkly, but the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him the way he once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Then one day, he filled the last page of his book. He looked up and said with a bittersweet sigh, "I guess it's time for me to move on." The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put on his hat and took his cane. As he went to the door, he turned and smiled and then waved goodbye. "I'll carry you all in here," he said, and he pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lessmore flew away. And as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been that long ago day when they'd all first met. The books were quiet for a while. Then they noticed that Morris Lessmore had left something behind. "It's his book," said his oldest friend. Inside was Morris's story of all his joys and sorrows, all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. Then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lessmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read, and so our story ends as it began, with the opening of a book. The end. Alright, so this book we're going to read is The Best Book to Read by Debbie Bertram and Susan Bloom, illustrated by Michael Garland. Hooray! It's a trip to the library today. We line up as we get off the bus. We've been specially invited. Our class is excited. The librarian is welcoming us. There she is. Hello, boys and girls, the librarian said. I see faces I've seen here before. Finding books can be fun. You may choose more than one. And my job is to help you explore. Picture books, chapter books, books that pop up, nonfiction and fairy tales too. You may look by yourselves, take some books from the shelves, then check out the very best book for you. With this outer space book, it's time to lift off. 3, 2, 1, now we blast off to Mars. It's fun to pretend you're in space with a friend as your rocket ship zooms towards the stars. A fire-breathing dragon comes alive in this book. The princess and prince must be ready. They will fight night and day, keep hot flames away, on guard with their shields and swords ready. Entomology is the study of bugs. Read this book, learn how many there are. Collect bugs with great care, punching holes for some air on the lid of an old pickle jar. Dessert, anyone? Here's a recipe book. Pour sugar, mix butter, add flour. Now you're ready to bake a big fudge birthday cake. Lick the bowl and then frost in 1 hour. Read a dinosaur book that goes way back in time. Pterodactyls are hunting for prey. T-Rex on the prowl roars a big hungry growl. Frightened raptors are running away. Who has a dog? The librarian asks. Here's a book about being a trainer. Sit, stay, and play dead. Do not jump on mom's bed. Training dogs will become a no-brainer. Abracadabra, a magic trick book. Pull a quarter right out of your ear. Wave your wand just like that. Rabbits jump from a hat. Then presto, they all disappear. I want that book. Me too, so do I. Doing magic would be so much fun. If you want the same book, then let's go take a look. Very often we have more than one. Raise your hand if you want your own library card. Sign your name on the line if you do. With your new card in hand, your book will be scanned. Bring it back by the date when it's due. Do you all have a book? The librarian asks. We hold up our books. Yes, we say. I see books about history, adventure, and mystery. So many great choices today. We climb back on the bus with our library books. Lots of reading will help us succeed. From page 1 to the end, a good book is a friend. Now we all have the best book to read. The end. What kind of book would you pick out? It's one thing I love about working at a library is you can read so many different kinds of books. And it's all for free.